Hey y'all, here's something that will be review for some of you and new for a few of you, Pythagorean Theorem. In Pythagorean Theorem, you're dealing with a right triangle, has a 90-degree angle, and you're looking for one of the sides if you're given two sides. So looking at this first one, I have a right triangle and I have a 6 and an 8. Then over here, this is the side I'm looking for. The side across from the 90-degree angle is always called the hypotenuse. I'm going to write that down so you can see what I'm saying. Hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is represented by the letter C in the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem looks like this: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay? So the other two sides are called legs and they're interchangeable. Either one can be A or B. So I'll just call this one A and this one B. And again, this is my C and it's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. 6 squared is 36 plus 8 squared is 64. 8 times 8, 64. That equals C squared. 36 plus 64 is 100. That equals C squared. Then to get C by itself, I'm going to have to take the square root. And of course, whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So C equals the square root of 100, which is 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. So this missing side is 10. Okay, now let's take a look at this one that's not so easy. These are things that I can't do in my head, and I'm sure you probably can't do them in your head either, so I'm going to show you how we do this using the calculator. Again, I've got to set the problem up, and here's the 90-degree angle, so across from it is the hypotenuse, and it's C. So C equals 15.4. These are interchangeable as A and B, so I'm just going to call this one A and this one B. You can switch it around. You say this one's A and this one's B. Totally does not matter. Okay, now I'm going to plug it into the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I'll have 6.3 squared plus X squared equals 15.4 squared. Now this is where I said I don't know these numbers. These are big numbers that I don't know how to square without a calculator. So I'm going to pull my calculator out. And if you have one of these calculators, or when you're using Desmos, you can simply type in like the 6.3 and then hit the squared button and enter, and it gives you the answer. If you don't, if you just have a regular calculator, like you're working at home right now and you just have a regular calculator, you can say 6.3 times 6.3, and it still gives you the answer. That's what squared means, is multiplying it times itself. So 39.69 plus x squared equals, now what is 15.4 squared? 15.4 squared is 237.16. All right, now just like in any other problem where I'm solving for x, I need to get it by itself. So I subtract 39.69 from both sides. These cancel, and I have x squared equals, and I'm going to pull my calculator back out, 237.16 minus 39.69 is 197.47. Okay, now I take the square root of both sides, and x equals, and I need the square root of 197.47. So I do the square root sign, and that's 14 point, and my instructions, I didn't write them down, but the instructions said around to one decimal place. So rounding that off, that would be 14.1. So x equals 14.1. Okay? And that is this side, 14.1. Now, you always want to make sure that your answer makes sense. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. So on this one, 10 was longer than 6 and 8, but not unreasonably longer. Seems legit, right? Then we look at this one, 14.1. Well, this one's still longer, and it needs to be longer. This one's definitely shorter, a lot shorter. And so this looks like a pretty legitimate answer too, okay? So always check to make sure that you're in the ballpark. All right. Next, I have 3 sides, and my instructions were to determine whether or not this was a right triangle, the sides of a right triangle. Well, if it is, then what's going to be true? A squared plus B squared is going to equal C squared. And like I just mentioned a minute ago, C is always the longest side. So which one of these is going to be C? Well, the one that's the longest, which would be this one. So this one is C. And these are A and B interchangeably. So I'm going to say 10 squared plus 49.5 squared. And I want to know, does that equal 50.5 squared? If it does, then it's a right triangle. If it doesn't, then we don't have a right triangle. Okay, 10 squared is easy. That's 100. But 49.5 squared, I have no idea. So I'm going to pick up my calculator and say 49.5 squared. And that's 2,450. Oh, you can't see it. 2,450.25. Does that equal 50.5 squared? Well, let's find out what that is. 50.5 squared. And that's 2550.25. Okay, 100 plus 2450 would be 2550.25. That does equal 2550.25. So the answer is yes, this is the sides of a right triangle. Okay, and then I have one more problem I'm going to go over. This is a multi-step Pythagorean Theorem problem, and what we want to do here is we want to find the area of this triangle. Find the area. All right, well, how do you find the area of a triangle? The area of a triangle equals 1/2 the base times the height. Okay, and in this particular triangle, here's the height. And the base, this is 5.2, so the whole base would be 10.4. But I don't really need the whole base because it's half the base times the height, so I already have that. So I just need the height. Okay, so how would I go about finding the height? Well, I have a right triangle here, so this one would have to be a right triangle, wouldn't it? Because it forms a straight line. A straight line's 180 degrees. So if this is a 90-degree triangle, I have this side and I have the hypotenuse, C. So height is what I don't know, and we'll say that's the A. This is a side, we'll call it B, and this one is C. So h squared plus 5.2 squared equals 7 squared. So the height squared plus 5.2 squared. Let's pull out our calculator again. 5.2 squared would be 27.04. And that equals 7 squared, which is 49. If I subtract 27.04 from both sides, these cancel, and h squared equals 49 minus 27.04 is 21.96. Okay, I'm going to take the square root of both sides to get h by itself, and h equals the square root of 21.96, which is, and we're going to round to one decimal place, 4.7. So the height of this triangle, right in here, is 4.7. Okay, so now the whole question was to find the area. So the area equals 1/2 the base times the height. Well, the whole base is 10.4, so half of it is 5.2. So the area equals 5.2, that's half the base, times the height, which is 4.7. So the area equals 5.2 times 4.7, and that's 24.44, or rounding to a tenth, it's 24.4. So the area of this triangle is 24.4, and I didn't give you any kind of measurement. Let's say this is yards, and so that would be 24.4 square yards. Okay. Alrighty then.